The future of Alfa Romeo in Britain is in the hands of Keir Starmer, and I'm going to explain later on in this video why. But first, I'm here to review the new Alfa Romeo Junior Hybrid, because this could be the first of the latest Alfas to break it into the mainstream. Because unlike the electric Juniors that have come before it, this Junior Ibrida is a hybrid that drinks just petrol. Plus, it starts from £4,500 less than the equivalent Peugeot 2008. And I'm going to reveal to you the 3 key options you absolutely have to go for if you choose one of these cars. But I will also reveal one of the hidden costs that might leave you better off going for one of its rivals. Now, bearing in mind this Junior Ibrida starts from just above the price of a Ford Puma, I think it has way more road presence for the money, especially if you spend £700 and go for this lovely shade of navigly blue paintwork, which I think is a must-have option. Although, awkwardly, I thought it looked best with the more vintage style front grille that we've seen on press pictures, but the car we have here today, well, it has the plasticky front grille we've seen on the electric models. Don't get me wrong, it's okay, but it doesn't look anywhere as nice. Personally, if I was buying one of these, I'd make sure I'd go for the version that has that slightly more interesting and more pretty front grille. Future me here. Now, it turns out that this is actually the standard grille. The one we have on our car is the optional one. I think I know which one I'd be going for. And around the sides here, because this is a Speciale model, we've got 18-inch alloy wheels, and they are a simpler version of the tele-dial design we've seen on Alfa Romeos for many years. They look pretty good, although I'm not a fan of the red stripe. We're getting rid of that pretty quickly. And around the back, yes, it's a familiar affair until you spot that we've got some more red down here, which encircles a pair of exhaust tailpipes. You don't see many real ones of those these days, do you? Now for the interior, which is different in one key way from the other cars, but I want to show you what's the same first because it's very easy to do that. It's basically everything here. Infotainment system, the dash layout, these binnacles as well are all identical to what you get in the electric cars. You don't, however, get the Sabelt racy seats that we had in the Veloce we drove. That's an option, and in this car, it will cost you £4,100. I'm not sure it's worth that premium in an Ibrida model, as lovely as they are. And if you want to see how lovely they are, watch the video that's on screen now. The difference in this Ibrida is still quite key because it's these shift paddles on the steering wheel here. Now, I'm disappointed they're not the lovely extended aluminium ones you get on an Alfa Giulia, for example, but they do serve a very important purpose and help you get the most out of the car. And I'll explain how when we drive it in a moment. Now, if you want to watch a more detailed interior review of the Junior, do get watching our Veloce video because we really dived into the details of both the design and also the tech. But in this Ibrida video, we're going to focus on the differences. And well, there is a really key one in the back here as well, because there's no batteries, of course, in the floor of this car. And so it means the floor itself is a little bit lower from the inside. So I actually have a noticeable amount more footroom. So my feet can actually go under the seat ahead quite comfortably. Don't get me wrong, it's still pretty cramped in here. My legs are still pretty folded up and my knee room isn't excellent. Got good headroom, but really the big benefit of no batteries is in the floor. Although creature comforts in the back here, it's pretty sparse. Now, there is one thing I would recommend doing for the car's interior, and that is going for the technology pack, which costs £2,200, but it adds a wireless charging mat, adaptive cruise control, and a few other things. But key is that it adds this reversing camera here, because, well, on this car, you've got very wide C-pillars and a pretty narrow view through the rear window. So I would say that is an essential addition to getting a Junior. Now, as far as the boot is concerned in the Ibrida, well, initially it looks the same as what you get in the electric cars. It's the same up top here, and you've even got a bit of extra underfloor storage, but what you really gain is this underfloor storage. Now, it could be a space for your spare wheel, or it could be a space to just hide away a few items. So the Ibrida is definitely the most usable of the lot. Now, before we hit the road, I want to talk to you about this car's running costs, because with the UK's new car tax laws, it's going to cost you £390 to tax this in its first year on the road. Of course, in later years, it will go down to £195. And if you buy one used, it will also be £195. But that opening cost is pretty heavy. But if you're looking for a used one of these, you won't have to worry about that. And I can give you a bit of advice to help you along as well, because you should get using the free and very helpful comparison tool on the Cinch app, which doesn't just let you compare the tax rates and the general running costs, but it also lets you look at other figures like boot space, for example, if you're comparing cars side by side. As for this one though, we're going to figure out whether this one is cheap to run on the road by doing a fuel economy test out on the open road in a little bit, but first we need to evaluate something just as important. Okay, so this is a proper test, something people who drive up and down the A1, for example, will be familiar with, because the slip roads are really short on those roads, just like this slip road here in this parking spot on the highway. Sometimes you've only got a matter of a few meters to get up to speed before a lorry comes up beside you. So we're going to test the acceleration in this car. Now I'm going to give it a bit of a rolling start. We're in natural mode, not advanced efficiency. So now we're at 20 kilometers an hour. I've seen a gap. I'm accelerating hard. And to get up to 110 kilometers an hour, which is about our UK speed limit, it's taken me this long. That was pretty nippy, actually. I mean, not a big shove in the back, but good and safe enough, I reckon, for most people, especially if you drive on those tricky A1 roads. When you get up to speed, if I settle into a cruise now, so 130 kilometers an hour is the speed limit here, which is a little bit more than we have in the UK. Anyone who drives on the outside lane will probably cruise at this speed. There is a bit of wind noise at this speed. I can hear the wind over the door mirrors, and I can hear the wind coming over the front of the car. The car is perfectly fine, perfectly composed, nice and easily settled, and I've got adaptive cruise, so it can do the work for me, but I am noticing the wind noise. We can actually objectively test how loud the car gets on the motorway. Now I'm cruising at 100 kilometers an hour. I'm gonna turn on our decibel reader on my phone here. Let's see, at 100. So that's 62 miles an hour, obviously. It's about 75 decibels, so that's okay. Let's see what it's like at 130 clicks. So let's get up to 130. Yeah, almost 80 decibels, over 80, obviously now I'm talking. So not the quietest car out there, but it's mostly because of that wind noise. Also, there is a little bit of fidgetiness to the ride. It's actually quite nice, but just a few moments it will catch a bump. So you can sense they've tuned this for the sporty stuff. What about an urban setting? Now we're into a nice little Italian town here, and the speed limit's 50 kilometers an hour, so it's close to our 30, a little bit more. So let's see what the volume is like. I can tell you, it's really quiet. Let's turn on the decibel meter. Barely a whisper, 60 decibels and under. At low speed, at town speed, this car will apparently drive in electric mode for about 60% of the drive. So I can confirm that, because right now the engine is off entirely. We are coasting a little bit down a hill. But even though this is a mild hybrid, not a proper hybrid, it's a really effective one that will do most of your town driving, especially if you're going slowly or in traffic, with just electric power. Still a bit fidgety on the ride though. Do you know what? It's the bigger bumps that this car can deal with, but the little fidgety ones, it's a bit pitter-pattery. They're always there. Now we're going to see if Alfa's claim for this car's acceleration is accurate, because the brand is claiming it will do 0 to 62 in 8.7 seconds. So we brought the race logic along to test it out ourselves. Right, I'm in dynamic mode. I'm going to not pin the accelerator, just give it a chance to not wheel spin. Better start than my practice run. Look at that. Right, let's see what we get on the race logic. Pretty quick. 8.1 seconds or 8.16, and that was to 60, but that's way quicker than claimed. This feels quick on the road. The car actually feels probably most natural when you stick it in dynamic mode and you get a bit of momentum into it, because then not only does the powertrain give you most of its muscle, not only does it feel most like a proper hybrid, but also the gearbox as well just feels a little bit more settled. Although, and here's the point I mentioned earlier when I said these paddles are important, it still occasionally seems to be in the wrong gear. It's a gear higher than you'd expect, probably because even in dynamic mode, it's trying to save you petrol. For most people, that is going to be a smart thing to do, but if you love driving, well then you will want to use these shift paddles to just drop back down a gear or two and put it into the way you want it to be. Make sure that the revs are higher, and therefore you get your bigger hit of acceleration. Even there, I dropped down 2 gears manually and it needed to drop down another one automatically. But it is decent. And I have to say, the ride and the handling are better with speed as well. At lower speed, that fidgetiness is very much always there, but at higher speed, it just seems to flow a bit better. Hang on a minute. I think I've just found out what Alfa Romeo has done to make this car feel different to the 2008. If you actually really press on, far faster than I think anyone who drives an Ibrida will do, then you suddenly discover there's a bit of agility plumbed into the chassis. It actually wants to oversteer a bit at the rear. That feels a lot more like an Alfa Romeo. And I must say the steering matches well to that, but it does also uncover a bit of a negative spot, which is that the brakes are at higher speed, a bit spongy, a bit less communicative. So yeah, it feels like they've done a good job in just adding a bit of fun to the suspension, but the rest of the car feels a bit more normal. Now it's time to test the fuel economy of this car, because obviously as the hybrid model, you're going to want to get a lot of mileage out of it. Now I have to admit, since we've started driving this morning, we've done over 70 miles, and according to the trip, we've averaged 31 miles per gallon, which is way under what is claimed for this car. But as you've seen in our footage, I've not been driving in a particularly normal way. There have been times when we've accelerated very hard, and unrealistically so. Since then, and since we've stopped filming all the cornering stuff, I've reset the trip, and I can see now, over the last, well, nearly 5 miles, we've averaged 54 miles per gallon, and I haven't been trying hard at all. I've just been cruising along with the traffic, coasting down the hills and driving steadily up them at normal road pace. I think it's really helped by the fact that this car has regen, even though it's only a mild hybrid. It's not a proper hybrid car, it's just the smallest type of hybrid you can get. And yet, when I come off the accelerator and when I come onto the brake, I can feel the battery taking energy back in. It actually makes it easier to drive too, because you can almost fully one pedal drive. But it means naturally the battery is better and there's less work for the petrol engine to do as well. So it's really probably the most advanced mild hybrid I've driven yet. Now we're onto the motorway because I wanted to check what MPG we'd get when we pick up the speed. And well, we're doing 70 miles an hour, even though we're in Italy, and we are averaging currently on the motorway 45.5 miles per gallon. That's including the driving we did before. So overall, as I said, it's an efficient car, but actually this is where the hidden cost versus the Peugeot is clear, and that is fuel usage, because that Peugeot isn't just better on paper, it's also better in the real world, and we know because we've driven one before. This Alfa is great, but it's not as fuel efficient as the Peugeot equivalent. And you know what, I think it might have something to do with aerodynamics, because we can hear that wind noise that we heard earlier again. I guess that's the cost of having such good looks. Now remember I said earlier that the future for Alfa Romeo in Britain depends on Keir Starmer. Well, that is because the UK government is currently considering relaxing its ban on petrol and diesel cars, including hybrids, from 2030. If they do that and it gets extended to 2035, well, sales of these will be a very good thing. But if they don't do that, well, if this sells really well, it means Alfa Romeo will have to pay a £15,000 fine per car to ensure that it meets the UK government's legal limits, because they, of course, want cars to be all electric. So really, the future of Alfa Romeo depends on Keir Starmer's ruling. Of course, if he does choose to relax it, sales of these will be happy days for Alfa Romeo, because 4 out of 5 Juniors being ordered right now are for non-electric models. So it means hybrid ones like these should be a very common sight on roads. But it doesn't really matter what happens with Keir Starmer and his government, because the verdict for this car from my point of view is the same, and that is that it is a very good crossover, but it's not that special in any particular measurable way. Really, it just does everything pretty good. But what makes it a winner is the fact that it undercuts its main rivals. Compared to the Ford Puma, for example, this interior feels much nicer. And even compared to the Peugeot, well, it just feels a little bit more special because it's an Alfa Romeo. So long as you go with those options I recommended earlier in the video, this does feel like a better value car than that Peugeot 2008 hybrid. Although if you need more help in figuring which hybrid is best for you, we've compiled some of our favourites and explained which type of hybrid might be best for you in the video on the screen.